Part 24. The School Sweetheart Soft Green Plum is Sweet and Wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 231. Chapter 231. Do I look that scary? However, in the end, she suppressed the jealousy in her heart, hid her emotions, and stepped forward. Did your foot hurt? I'm sorry, it's all because of me. Let me help you. Since Yushu took the initiative to help, Song Tingzi couldn't help but hold her on. So he gave up his position to Yushu. The opening ceremony was held in the auditorium of Yunjing No. 4 Middle School. After the warm-up performance, there was a speech by the leader, followed by an artistic performance by the students of No. 4 Middle School, and finally a group photo. The entire opening ceremony lasted about 2 hours. After the opening ceremony, the team leader took everyone to familiarize themselves with the environment of No. 4 Middle School and then returned to the hotel by car. After returning to the hotel, the team leader took everyone to the restaurant for dinner. Before entering the restaurant, he said to everyone, after eating, everyone should go back to their rooms to rest. Don't run around. If you have anything, you can find me or the hotel customer service. You will be there tonight. Go to bed early and try to bring out your best in the next 2 days. Okay, let's go eat. The hotel restaurant is a self-service restaurant. When Song Tingzi saw that there was only a small amount of food on Lu Ning's plate, he couldn't help but ask, why do you eat so little? Not too hungry yet. It was probably because he had eaten milk tea and cakes in the afternoon, and his ankle was still aching, so Lu Ning had no appetite. Song Tingzi looked at her and said, the hotel restaurant usually closes at 8 o'clock. You can come back later. I want to come over with everyone, have something to eat, and go back early to rest. Besides, eating less at night is good for your health, Lu Ning said. Song Tingzi didn't say anything after hearing this. His eyes immediately fell on her feet and he asked, how are your feet? Lu Ning moved her ankle and said, it's okay. It doesn't hurt anymore. It should be fine after a sleep. That's good, Song Tingzi nodded. The hotel should have emergency medicines. If your feet feel uncomfortable at night, you can call the front desk and ask them to send you some ice packs. Thank you, I understand. Lu Ning took the plate and found a seat. As soon as I sat down, a figure suddenly appeared in front of me. Lu Ning raised her head and saw a tall, thin boy sitting down opposite her. The boy's eyes are raised at the end. Like Lu Xian, he is born with a pair of passionate peach blossom eyes. He stretched out his hand towards Lu Ning and said, hello, my name is Shen Lu. Nice to meet you. It is not polite to not respond when someone takes the initiative to say hello. Lu Ning. After Lu Ning said her name lightly, she looked away. Ordinary people would probably back off when they saw her cold look. However, the other party looked familiar and continued, you are also a contestant in this winter camp, right? I saw you at the door of the hotel in the morning. Which school are you from? Seeing that Lu Ning was silent, he took out his cell phone and said, let's add a friend. We can keep in touch in the future. Lu Ning put down the chopsticks in her hand, looked at the other person and said, I'm done eating, you eat slowly. After saying that, he stood up and left. Shen Lu looked at the mobile phone he handed out, and then at the barely touched dinner plate opposite him. He couldn't help but let out a tisk, touched his face and said, do I look that scary? Why did you scare people away directly? Then he looked at the direction Lu Ning was leaving, curled his lips, and chuckled, it's interesting. Do all good-looking girls have such personality these days? End of this chapter. The School Sweetheart Soft Green Plum is Sweet and Wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 232. Chapter 232, Having a Heart of Stone. Lu Ning returned to the room, took out clean clothes, and went to the bathroom to take a shower. Halfway through the bath, she suddenly found that her sprained ankle was swollen. Lu Ning was startled. She turned off the water and took a closer look. It was indeed swollen and hard when poked, but she could no longer feel the pain. After getting out of the shower, Lu Ning dried her hair and searched Baidu on her mobile phone. She found out that her condition was caused by local tissue oozing and edema caused by local ligament and soft tissue damage in the ankle joint after a sprain. Lu Ning frowned and was hesitating whether to ask room service to bring ice packs when she heard a knock on the door. Who would be looking for her at this time? Could it be the takeaway that guy ordered for me again? She walked over and opened the door with a suspicious look on her face. The moment the door opened, a packing bag was actually handed to her. Lu Ning looked along the hand carrying the bag and saw the boy she met in the restaurant before. The latter stood at the door, with one hand in his pocket and the tip of the other finger hooking a bag. He handed it to Lu Ning and said, "I saw that you didn't eat much at night. I was afraid that you would be hungry, so I packed some for you food." "Thank you, but no need," Lu Ning said and was about to close the door. However, the latter quickly resisted and said, "Don't get me wrong, I just want to make friends. We are all studying competition, and we may have the opportunity to become college classmates in the future. I don't want to, don't need, and it's inconvenient." Lu Ning refused simply and thoroughly, leaving no face to the other party. "Hey, don't reject me so quickly," Shen Lu said unwillingly, "we are destined to meet each other. There are still a few days left in the competition, maybe we can become friends." Lu Ning frowned. She hated boys who stalked her the most. The only one who liked doing this without making her hate him was probably Lu Xian. Since the person in front of him was not the other person, Lu Ning naturally had no good impression of him. Looked at the other person coldly and said, "Let go, otherwise I will call the police. If you harass the contestants during the competition, I don't know if you will be disqualified from the competition." Shen Lu. "No, it won't happen." He hurriedly let go of his hand. Tisk. "It's really unusually cold. She obviously looks like a little fairy, but she has a heart of stone." I think of him, Shen Lu, who roams the campus, surrounded by suitors, and has never been rejected by a girl in his entire life. Lu Ning was about to close the door when she suddenly thought of something and looked at him and said, "Wait a minute, how do you know which room I live in?" "Shen Lu, didn't you tell me your name?" "I asked the front desk. I said I was your classmate and I left my phone with you, but I didn't remember which room you lived in. Then they told me." "Impossible." Lu Ning's face instantly turned colder. "You know that the other person is dishonest. The room she registered at the front desk was not this room at all." "Okay," Shen Lu shrugged, "a girl who claimed to be your classmate told me. When I went to the front desk to inquire, I happened to bump into her. She said she was your classmate, and then told me your room number." Lu Ning couldn't help but frown, and then glanced in the direction of the room where Yushu lived. First he stepped on her shoes when she got out of the car, causing her to almost fall off the car, and then she casually revealed her room number. Lu Ning couldn't figure out what the other person wanted to do. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The School Sweetheart Soft Green Plum is Sweet and Wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 233. Chapter 233 Avoiding Suspicion. After a moment, Lu Ning withdrew his gaze and looked at Shen Lu across from him. "I don't care what your purpose is. I just want to take the exam quietly. I hope you won't do anything inexplicable again." "No, can you answer me a question?" "Explain." "Am I scary? Why do you seem to hate me so much?" The other party's repeated rejections gave him strong self-doubt. "No, I don't hate you," Lu Ning said. "It's just that I don't like it." "And you?" "I just don't have the habit of striking up conversations with strangers." After Lu Ning finished speaking, she closed the door directly in front of the other party. Just as he turned around, before he could sit down, the knock on the door rang again. Whether you are done with it or not, I already told you that I don't want to make any friends. If you bother me again, I will really call security. Lu Ning opened the door with a cold face. Unexpectedly, the person standing outside the door turned out to be Song Tingzi. What happened? Song Tingzi frowned slightly and looked at her. Nothing. Do you have anything to do with me? Lu Ning calmed down and said. I just passed by the front desk and I got 2 ice packs for you. Song Tingzi handed the ice pack to her and said, although it's nothing serious, if you have a sprain, it's best to apply a cold compress. Maybe it didn't feel serious at the time. There may also be pain afterwards. Thank you, Lu Ning said as she took the ice pack. By the way, who was that person just now? Song Tingzi asked. When he first came here, he saw someone leaving. Judging from this girl's reaction, she probably wasn't her friend. Lu Ning, an unimportant person named Shen Lu, is also a contestant participating in the winter camp this time. Do you need me to help you tell the team leader? Song Tingzi asked. No need, the other party probably won't come again, Lu Ning said. That's okay, you go to bed early. Okay, good night. Just as Lu Ning was about to close the door, Song Tingzi suddenly noticed her exposed ankles. Your feet. Lu Ning looked down. After taking a shower, she put on the pajamas she brought from home. When Shen Lu first came over, she was checking her ankle. At this time, the leg of her pajama pants was still half rolled up, and the injured ankle was exposed, and the redness and swelling were extremely obvious. It's okay, Lu Ning lowered his pants, it should be local tissue oozing and edema caused by local ligament and soft tissue damage. Song Tingzi glanced at her injured ankle and said, if you don't mind, can I check it for you? No need. Lu Ning knew that he had been reading medical books, but he still didn't want to trouble the other person too much. After all, we are outside, so we should avoid suspicion. Seeing her refusal, Song Tingzi stopped insisting and said, the swelling is so severe, it's best to go to the hospital for a checkup. Lu Ning, let's observe it overnight. If the swelling doesn't subside tomorrow, it's not too late to go to the hospital. Seeing this, Song Tingzi stopped trying to persuade him and just said, then you should pay attention to yourself. If the pain is severe, go to the hospital. It is recommended to apply cold compresses for the first 3 days to reduce local tissue bleeding and reduce local swelling. After 3 days, you can apply hot compresses and apply some external blood activating drugs. Use blood stasis and pain relieving drugs to avoid excessive exercise, which may cause habitual sprains in the future. Well, thank you. Then I'll leave first. Song Tingzi turned around and left, not noticing that someone in the corner secretly took a photo of the two of them. End of this chapter. The School Sweetheart Soft Green Plum is Sweet and Wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 234. Chapter 234. Can you please stop following me? The next day is the day of the official examination, which takes place from 8 to 12:30. 1.5 hours. According to regulations, contestants must arrive at the examination room before 7:45, so the team leader asked everyone to have breakfast and gather at the hotel entrance at 7:10. Lu Ning got up at 6 o'clock and arrived at the restaurant at 6:20. At this time, other people just came over one after another. As soon as Shen Lv entered the restaurant with his classmates, he saw the figures inside. His eyes lit up. He immediately took an empty plate, walked towards Lu Ning, stood next to her and said, "Good morning." "Morning." Lu Ning raised her head and glanced at him, then walked towards the food next to her. Shen Lu immediately followed him and asked, "How are you preparing for the exam later?" "Very good." After Lu Ning finished speaking, he stopped what he was doing, straightened up and looked at the other party. "Can you stop following me?" Just when Shen Lu was about to say something, he heard a voice behind the two of them, "What's wrong?" Song Tingzi was seen walking over, with Yu Shu following behind him. Song Tingzi looked at Shen Lu, and Shen Lu was also looking at Song Tingzi. The two boys' eyes met in the air. In the end, it was Shen Lu who smiled at Song Tingzi first and asked Lu Ning, "Your friend? Is there anything else you need?" Lu Ning did not answer the other party's question directly, and her intention to chase them away was very obvious. Fortunately, the other party was quite sensible. "It's okay, I'll go over now and see you in the examination room later." Song Tingzi watched the other person leave, then looked back at Lu Ning and said, "How is your foot?" As for who the person was just now, he didn't ask much. "Lu Ning, the swelling has gone down a bit, thanks to the ice pack you gave me last night." "It's okay, it's best to apply ice again tonight." Yu Shu on the side saw the two of them talking to themselves, and no one paid attention to her. Her face became increasingly ugly. After a while, she took the initiative to say with a smile, "Let's eat quickly. We should gather in a while." Lu Ning glanced at the other person, then nodded. At 7:10, the car set off for Yunjing No. 4 Middle School on time. When Lu Ning entered the examination room, she was bumped by a boy who came in from behind, causing her pencil case to fall to the ground. "I'm sorry," the latter quickly picked it up and handed it to her. "It doesn't matter." Lu Ning took it and was about to find a seat. Suddenly her steps paused and she stared at the pen in the pencil case carefully. The more she looked at it, the more something seemed wrong. "What's wrong, classmate? Did you break the pen?" the boy who just bumped into her asked nervously. Lu Ning opened her pen bag and took out a pen, and tried writing on the back of her hand. The pen produced ink smoothly. "It's just that the color is a little lighter than what she usually uses. You can't see it if you don't look carefully." Lu Ning's face couldn't help but become solemn. "Classmate, is there any problem with this deal?" the boy couldn't help but asked in confusion when he saw Lu Ning's face. "Lu Ning, this is a faded pen." "What?" the latter looked at Lu Ning in surprise. Lu Ning didn't say anything, but took out the other two pens. She prepared a total of 3 pens this time, and without exception, they were all replaced by faded pens. And with less than 10 minutes left before the exam, if you go out to buy something now, you may not be able to come back in time. When the boy saw this, he took out a pen from his pencil case and handed it to her with a blushing face. "Classmate, I have 2 pens, can I lend you one?" Lu Ning glanced at the other person's pen bag and saw that he had only prepared 2 pens in total. "No, thank you," she said. End of this chapter. The School Sweetheart Soft Green Plum is Sweet and Wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 235. Chapter 235 Curiosity. "Then what should you do?" The boy looked at her worriedly and said, "I just saw that the stationery store at the door seems to be closed. If you go to buy it now, you will definitely have to go further, but the exam will start soon. I think borrowing it from others is the fastest way. Otherwise, ask everyone if anyone has extra pens." Lu Ning looked around. They were all unfamiliar faces, and they were all in a competitive relationship. Borrowing a pen from everyone at this time, Lu Ning just thought about it for a moment and then gave up. "It doesn't matter. If you are not late for the competition for more than half an hour, you can enter," Lu Ning said. After saying that, he turned around and walked outside. "Hello." The boy opened his mouth and wanted to call her, but stopped midway. Although you can still enter the venue as long as it takes no more than half an hour, time is very important to these contestants. Many people lose the game because of lack of time. And entering the venue late can easily affect the player's mentality. However, I am not the other person's person, and it is not easy to make decisions for the other person. Next door, Song Tingzi, who had just found his seat and was about to sit down, saw Lu Ning hurriedly coming out of the examination room next door, and couldn't help but frown. The examination rooms for this competition are distributed by drawing lots. The two persons are not in the same examination room, but the two examination rooms are close to each other. Luning. As soon as Luning came out of the examination room, she heard someone calling her. She turned around and saw Song Tingzi chasing him out of the examination room next door. The exam is about to start, where are you going? Song Tingzi strode to catch up with her. Luning, my pen was replaced. Now I have to go to the stationery store. You can go back and don't worry about me. After saying that, he was about to leave. The next second, his wrist was grabbed. She turned around and saw Song Tingzi opening his pen bag, taking out the black pen inside and handing it to her, saying, "You use my pen. I know where there is one for sale. I'll buy it." No, Luning just wanted to refuse. The latter put the pen directly into the other person's hand and strode outside. Luning couldn't help but pursed her lips and watched the other party's figure disappear into the corridor. She stood there for a while before turning back to the examination room. Luning found her exam seat number and was just about to sit down when she heard the boy sitting in the back row say, "Hey, classmate, are you back so soon? Have you solved the problem with your pen?" It was the boy who just knocked off her pencil case. "Yeah," Luning nodded lightly and sat down in her seat. She was wondering who had replaced her pen. Thinking about it, it can only be when we are in the restaurant. There are still a few minutes until the exam starts. "Classmate," the voice from the back seat sounded again. Luning turned around. The boy in the back row looked at her and said, "Can I ask, how did you find out that your pen is a faded pen?" It was obvious that he looked similar to the ones they usually used, so he was very curious. How did the other party discover it in the first place? Fortunately, she discovered it early. Otherwise, by the time the exam started, she would have found out and it would be too late to change. Luning, nothing, it's just because all my pens are used, and the refills of the 3 pens just inside are all brand new. That's why she felt something was wrong at first. The latter looked at her in surprise when he heard this. This observation must be too careful. However, luckily she noticed. For a moment, the boys looked at her with admiration in their eyes, and they didn't know whether to say that she observed carefully or that she was lucky. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The School Sweetheart Soft Green Plum is Sweet and Wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 236. Chapter 236, A Strange Arc. At this time, Yushu, who was in another examination room, glanced at the invigilator who appeared at the door with examination papers, and couldn't help but curl her lips. Luning kept staring outside until the exam time was about to start, but Song Tingzi was nowhere to be seen. She suddenly got up and walked outside. "Where are you going?" The boy sitting in the back row saw this and asked in a low voice. "Something's wrong," Luning said. When she walked to the door, she happened to run into the invigilator. The latter glanced at her and said, "This student, the exam is about to start. Please go back to your seat and sit down." "Teacher, I need to go out for a while and I'll be back soon." After Luning finished speaking, she walked directly to the examination room next door. Song Tingzi did not appear in the examination room until a quarter of an hour after the exam started. The invigilator glanced at him and said, "Your name is Song Tingzi?" "It's me." Song Tingzi nodded and took out his ID card and admission ticket. "Although I am curious that the other party will know my name, now is obviously not the time to think so much." The other party took it and took a look at it, then handed it back to him and said, "Come in quickly." He didn't ask any questions during the process. On the other hand, other people in the examination room couldn't help but look at him a few more times when they saw that someone was late for the competition. Song Tingzi returned to his seat after taking the certificate. The exam lasts for 4.5 hours, but the exam questions actually only have 3 mathematics solutions and 5 small questions. This shows how difficult the test questions are. Coming out of the examination room, Song Tingzi saw Lu Ning waiting by the door and walked up directly. "How did you do in the exam?" Lu Ning asked. "I shouldn't have asked at first, but thinking that the other party wasted part of the exam time because of me, I couldn't help but ask." "It's okay, there shouldn't be any problem," Song Ting said. Lu Ning felt relieved after hearing this. People like them only know whether they can do it or not, and the probability of miscalculation is very small. Since he said there was no problem, it must be that there really was no problem. By the way, have you ever thought about who did the pen change? I think it is necessary to tell the team leader. Song Tingzi looked at her and said seriously. "There's a little clue, let's talk about it when we get back." At this time, Yushu also came out of the examination room on the other side, saw the two of them and asked with a smile, "The competition questions this time are quite difficult." For the last question, I have seen similar questions in the National College Student Competition Simulation Question Bank. Although I have done it, I am not sure whether it is correct or not. By the way, how did you two do in the test? Very good, Lu Ning said. Yushu raised a strange arc at the corner of his mouth, looked at the two of them with a smile, and said, "Really? That's great. Let's go back." Lu Ning glanced at the other person, saw his expression in his eyes and said, "Let's go." In the afternoon, everyone stayed in the hotel to prepare for the exam. The next day, continue the exam. This time, Lu Ning checked her things in advance and there were no more accidents. The exam will end in the morning and you will have free time in the afternoon. The tour leader told everyone that they can make their own arrangements, but they must return to the hotel before dinner. "Where are you going? Why don't we go shopping nearby? I heard that there are many famous attractions in Yunjing, but unfortunately, we only have half a day," Yushu asked Lu Ning and Song Tingzi with a smile. Lu Ning and Song Tingzi looked at her, their eyes a little deep. "What's wrong? Why are you looking at me like that?" Yushu was looked at by the two people, and her heart skipped a beat for no apparent reason. End of this chapter. The School Sweetheart Soft Green Plum is Sweet and Wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 237. Chapter 237. Who do you like? Yushu, have I ever offended you? Lu Ning looked at her and asked seriously. Yushu felt panicked for a moment, but quickly regained her composure and said with a smile, "No." "What's wrong?" Lu Ning, since I didn't offend you, why did I do that? Yushu twitched her lips. "What are you talking about? Why can't I understand? Why do you want to change my pen?" Lu Ning didn't want to see her pretending to be stupid, so she got straight to the point. The expression on Yushu's face froze for a moment, and soon she said with an expression of incomprehension, "What on earth are you talking about? Why did you replace your pen? Has your pen been replaced by someone? When did it happen? Did you find a teacher? How did you solve it?" Lu Ning admired the other party for being able to keep up the pretense at such a time. Lu Ning watched the other party's performance quietly, and waited until the other party could no longer continue the performance. Then she said, "Do you think no one knows what you have done? I have already called up the restaurant's surveillance. Do you think if I hand over the video to can the organizing committee disqualify you from participating?" Yushu couldn't help but clench the hands hanging by her sides, and maintain the smile on her face stiffly. "Is there any misunderstanding?" "Whether it is a misunderstanding or not, I will leave it to the organizing committee to judge." After Lu Ning finished speaking, he planned to leave. "When did you find out?" Yushu's voice sounded from behind. Lu Ning turned around. "So you admit that you did it?" Yushu raised her head and looked at her with a gloomy face. "I did the right thing. I just don't like you." I want to teach you a lesson and don't want to see you get too proud. You changed my pen because you don't like me, Lu Ning laughed angrily. Do you know how long I have been preparing for this competition? Just because of your selfish desires, you are going to destroy others. Don't you think you've gone too far for a long time? Yushu pursed her lips and said nothing. Now that you have discovered it, I have nothing to say. If you want to expose it to the organizing committee, go ahead. Before this, don't you think you owe me an apology? Yushu sneered and said, since I did it, I don't think I was wrong, and naturally I won't regret it. You think you are right, so where did I go wrong? Lu Ning frowned. Now that her face was broken, Yushu stopped pretending and looked at her with disgust and said, your fault is that you are too good and too eye-catching. You know? From the first time I saw you, you didn't I like you. Everyone is jealous, and I am too. I admit that I am jealous of you, but I can't stand it even more. You have such good people around you, but you still don't know how to be satisfied with all the good things. You want it all, but do you know that you are particularly hated by people like this? Lu Ning admired the other party's 3 views. There was no reason to say such a thing. Lu Ning felt that she didn't have to waste time talking to the other party. I understand. If you don't think you are at fault, then I can only leave it to the organizing committee to deal with it. In addition, what you said about Chao-Chin Muchu and Chao-Chin Muchu is just your unilateral accusation. I do not accept it. Everyone has the right to choose friends, and getting along with someone of the opposite does not necessarily mean an ambiguous relationship. Really, Yushu looked at her with a mocking face and said, since you said it so frankly, can you answer me directly, between Lu Xian and Song Tingzi, who do you like? End of this chapter. The School Sweetheart Soft Green Plum is Sweet and Wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 238. Chapter 238 We Are a Family. Why, you can't answer, seeing that Lu Ning remained silent, a trace of sarcasm and pride flashed across Yushu's face. Lu Ning, I don't feel the need to answer you. Yushu sneered and said, don't you think you are very candid? Since it is not an ambiguous relationship, it should be easy to answer. You don't say it just because you want to catch both of you. Or, in fact, you don't like anyone, but you let everyone misunderstand you without explaining. In fact, you just want to show everyone your charm and think you are great. Lu Ning frowned. These are just your guesses. She had never thought of it this way. Yushu, even if it is a guess, it is what your behavior tells me. It was your own misbehavior that gave everyone the opportunity to misunderstand, wasn't it? Let's go, there's no need to argue with her at this time, Song Tingzi said from the side. Yushu's mood suddenly changed. He stared in his direction and said, Song Tingzi, don't you want to see her true face clearly? I don't understand. You protect her so much and treat her differently from others. What is it for? I also like you, why can't you see how I am worse than her? In terms of grades, she is not much worse than her. In terms of appearance, Yushu doesn't feel like she is losing to her. She doesn't understand why everyone likes her. She took the initiative to show her kindness, why couldn't the other party see her? At least she won't secretly change someone else's pen in the examination room, Song Tingzi said coldly. Yushu couldn't help but turn pale. She admitted that she was jealous for a moment and couldn't help but want to teach the other party a lesson. I thought it would take at least 2 hours for the faded pen to fade, and by the time I noticed it, it was already too late. Besides, there were so many people in the restaurant yesterday, who could notice that he made it himself. But she forgot that there was surveillance. She felt strange when the other party didn't respond yesterday, thinking that the other party didn't notice. This is fine. The other party doesn't know that his pen has been tampered with and thinks that he has done it well. In fact, when it comes time to make corrections, he will end up with a blank paper. Judging from the appearance of the other party, he should have noticed it a long time ago. He deliberately didn't say anything before, just to avoid alerting the snake, so that he could go back and call the surveillance. But she had done everything, and it would be too hypocritical to say she regretted it. When facing Luning, she could say that she had no regrets. However, when facing Song Tingzi, she could no longer maintain her confidence. She only felt that the worst side of herself was being seen by the other party. And Song Tingzi continued, "My relationship with Luning is not what you think. You misunderstood it. It is wrong for you to harm others because of your own selfish desires. He knows best about his relationship with Luning. He doesn't need others to tell him whether there is any ambiguity, let alone others to tell the difference for him. I didn't misunderstand. She already has Lucian, and she is still ambiguous with you. She clearly wants to be in two different boats. You have been deceived by her." Yushu gritted her teeth and refused to admit that she was wrong. "Song Tingzi, we are not ambiguous, and she did not lie to me. The reason why you see us together often is because she is my sister. We are a family, and it is normal to be together." This is the first time that he has publicly admitted that he and Luning are a family in front of outsiders. Not only Yushu was stunned, but even Luning couldn't help but glance at him in surprise. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The School Sweetheart Soft Green Plum is Sweet and Wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 239. Chapter 239 Explosive Hair. What did you say? Yushu looked at the two of them in shock, then quickly shook her head and said, "Impossible, you lied to me. Your surname is Song and her surname is Lu, how could she be your sister? Who said we have to have the same surname to be brothers and sisters? Even if they are brothers and sisters, there are many situations. How is this possible?" Yushu couldn't accept the fact that Luning was Song Ting's sister. If Luning is his sister, then what does his jealousy, disgust, and all the things he has done to her count? Wouldn't it be a complete joke? Luning, what you don't know doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Whether you believe it or not, we are not the kind of relationship you think. It makes no sense for you to target me because of him since Song Tingzi chose to make it public. She also there is nothing to hide. Yushu couldn't help but cover her ears and said, "Shut up, stop talking." Luning originally had no intention of continuing, so she took one look at the other person and left with Song Tingzi. The two did not directly choose to hand over the video to the organizing committee, but reported the situation to the team leader. Because Luning changed the pen in time, it didn't have much impact. The team leader discussed with Luning whether this matter could be avoided in a big deal, and promised that he would report the matter to the school later. Luning knew that the other party was also thinking about the honor of the provincial team. In addition, there are no irreversible consequences. Even if a quarrel breaks out, it will only attract some discussion and it is impossible to really disqualify the other party. Although Luning was not satisfied, she knew that this could only be the case. As for how the school will deal with it, we won't know until we return. Want to go around the area? Song Tingzi asked Luning after coming out of the team leader's room. Although I don't know the final outcome, I have at least resolved a worry. In addition, the game is over, and it is a rare trip to Yunjing. It would be a pity if I just stayed in the hotel. Luning nodded, and the two of them immediately went to the hotel entrance and took a taxi. The driver was a local. He knew that they were students participating in the competition, and they also heard that they wanted to visit nearby attractions, and recommended several places to them. They are all distinctive attractions nearby. After getting off the car, Song Tingzi took the initiative to queue up to buy tickets. Luning went to the door to wait for him, when her cell phone suddenly rang. It was Lucian calling, asking her how the game was. Just as he was talking, Song Tingzi came over and said, "I bought the tickets, let's go." On the other end of the phone, Lu Xian's face turned dark as soon as he heard Song Tingzi's voice. "Where are you? Why do I seem to hear the voice of the pretty boy named Song?" We are. Lu Ning glanced at the name of the attraction in front of him, and after telling the other party, he said, "We are planning to go in and have a look." When Lu Xian heard that the two of them were not only together, but also went to nearby attractions together, he was immediately furious. "Stinky girl, stay away from the pretty boy named Song, do you hear me? That boy is gone at the first sight. Be kind. Also, don't go out with boys casually. I'll go with you wherever you want to go during the holidays." The guy's voice was so loud that even Song Tingzi, who was standing 1 meter away from her, heard it and couldn't help but look sideways at her, his eyes filled with meaning. Lu Ning was slightly embarrassed and couldn't help coughing lightly. "Okay, I'll die if nothing happens." End of this chapter. The School Sweetheart Soft Green Plum is Sweet and Wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 240. Chapter 240 Group Photo. Lu Xian looked at the phone that was hung up, his face was clouded, extremely dark. "Third brother, come over and play quickly," on the court in front of him, statement waved to him. Lu Xian took off his coat with a dark face and walked towards the field ahead. Half an hour later, there was a sound of ghosts crying and wolves howling. I can't do it anymore. Third brother, please let me rest for a while before continuing." She lied down directly in the middle of the field and refused to get up. Others also gasped and said, "Yes, third brother, what did you eat today? This beating was too hard. Everyone was just playing casually, so why don't you take it so seriously?" No more playing. After Lu Xian finished a game, the depression in his chest not only did not dissipate, but he felt even more uncomfortable. He threw away the ball in his hand, picked up the clothes on the ground, and turned around to leave. Shu Shu sat up and looked at each other with a few others. "What's wrong with third brother?" "I don't know. It seems that no one here has provoked him, right?" Several other people also looked confused. The statement rested for a while, got up, caught up with Lu Xian in front and said, "Third brother, do you still have evening self-study tonight?" "Superior. Since Sister Ning is not here anyway, why not call Shen Yu and Chu Nan and go to the internet cafe to play black games in the evening? We haven't been there for a long time." Int. Lu Xian felt extremely uncomfortable when he thought that the person accompanying the girl at this moment was not him. Had he not been playful and not doing his job properly before, he would not have given others the opportunity to take advantage of him. It is enough to make the same mistake once. If she doesn't study hard, the gap between her and that girl will only get wider and wider. He would never allow the same thing to happen a second time. On the other side, Lu Ning and the others went to the nearby Xiangshan Park. It is said that in the early years, a large area of apricot flowers was planted on Xiangshan Mountain. When the flowering season comes every year, the flowers here are rich in fragrance. Unfortunately, it is not the flowering period of apricot flowers now. But the mountains full of red leaves are quite interesting. In this season, the red leaves on the mountains are all transparent, which is particularly beautiful. There were many tourists who came here to visit the mountain. Lu Ning and the others met a couple on the way and asked them to help take a photo. After taking the photo, the two young lovers were very satisfied with the photo taken by Lu Ning with her mobile phone. Then they looked at her and Song Tingzi and offered, "How about I take a photo for you too?" "No," Lu Ning glanced at Song Tingzi next to him, then shook his head and refused. The girl winked at her and said, "Don't be embarrassed. It's rare to go out to play, so of course you have to take photos to keep some memories." Lu Ning knew that the other party must have misunderstood. Just when she was about to explain, she saw Song Tingzi hand over his mobile phone and said, "Thank you." Lu Ning glanced at the other party in surprise, but seeing that the other party had already done so, it was hard to say anything more. He and Song Tingzi stood together, and the young couple helped to take a group photo. When they were parting, she faintly heard the girl saying to the boy, "Do they look like the two of us when we first started dating?" They were even embarrassed to take pictures. They were so cute. However, both of them were so beautiful. They fit together so well. Lu Ning couldn't help but glance at Song Tingzi. She wasn't sure if the other party heard her, but she just felt a little embarrassed. Also, Song Tingzi's behavior puzzled her. Song Tingzi held his mobile phone and glanced at the photos the two of them had just taken. Then he put away his mobile phone and looked at Lu Ning and said, "Don't think too much. I just think it's a rare visit. I'll take a photo as a souvenir and send it to me later. Dad and Aunt Tang, they should be happy when they see it." End of this chapter.